I was gonna pry you a little bit on the Canyon stuff, anyways. But are you telling me you guys are gonna be like scanning butts or like forearms?
It's like sitting on the photocopier back in the day.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Being slouches.
Today, we actually, this is a really cool, a little bit different episode today, but it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I've told people that my second favorite sport is business. So I'm actually really excited to have Rasmus Barfred on today, the co-founder of Magic5 goggles. So it's going to be a really cool episode. But first, I'm Coach Dale Sanford.
And I am Coach Bryant Funston. We are the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com, checking Facebook and YouTube at Build Peak Compete, and or all up on that Instagram at BPC Performance.
Boom. Whew. It's been a minute, Funston. And
yeah, I can still read. I can still read, so that's good.
All right. So, Rasmus.
Yes.
You have created, I would say, one of the more well-known brands at least in the triathlon community for sure. And I'm sure in swimming, I'm not quite as much into just swimming, but you guys have created a really, really cool brand. Before we get too much into the business though, there has to be some sort of a connection there, I'm assuming, with swimming and triathlon. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into endurance sports or triathlon or whatever. And let's just put the connection together here first.
Got it. Let's, well, me and endurance sports started when I was 17, 18. I played soccer. That's like what you have to do in Denmark when you grow up. So I did that. And then I remember it was actually my cousin who, he's 5 years older. So it's like 23, I was 18. My cool big cousin, he came and challenged me to do a bike race in France called La Marmotte. You go up Col de Grandon, Telegraph, Galibier, and Albues in one day. And he was like, "Hey, don't you want to do this in 2 months?" And I'd never been on a race bike, so we both went out, bought an old aluminium Bianchi bike, and then we jumped in a car, drove to France, and like suffered for 7, 8, 9. I can't even remember how long time it took, but it was a brutal day. But I was just instantly hooked on the endurance.
Just went for it.
Exactly, and I really loved it. It was like, I think it was a combination of, like, I came from soccer, team sport. I also love that, but doing something that was about yourself and something where you got experiences and being out in nature and really like, it was not in a closed off field with a lot of other dudes. It was just like, you, the machine, being out there fighting and getting this experience. And it was just like instant love. So that's how I started getting into endurance sport. Then the next year, basically the same thing happened. Then this time it was my aunt. She just had my cousin, and she had signed up for an Ironman, first Ironman in Copenhagen. It was actually a challenge back then. And she came like 3 months. She came in May or June, I would say, and challenged me to do an Ironman in August. And I was like, okay, I've done La Marmotte, sure I can do that. So I started swimming, and then 3 months later, I did my first Ironman in Copenhagen, or first challenge, but it was the full distance. And then I think the combination of I'd never ran a marathon, but I'd done a lot of running from soccer. I was lucky that swimming came pretty easy to me. And then the cycling, I already liked that. And then it was just like, okay, triathlon. I have like 3 different things I can geek out about. I like the endurance part of it. I had a good start. It was a good first Ironman. It was a fun experience, and that's how it started. So that was my intro to endurance sport.
So there was no like intermediate there. You went big from the gun.
I mean,
there.
it sounds like all you have to do is challenge Rasmus, and he's all over it.
Yeah, it was like doing that race in France. It's one of the it's a big amateur race, but it's up all the iconic climbs.
Yeah.
It's in one day. It's tons of climbing. It's a pretty long race as well. And I think and it also characterized me today when I'm writing or doing something else. It's really when you get out on like the 5th hour, 6th hour, 7th hour, where it's more about the mental game and the tenacity.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where I'm best, I would say. And I think I learned that from those experiences. I never really got that from soccer. There was like 90-minute game, and it was like up down the field. It's a team sport, and I just got hooked.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what was harder, the event in France or the full Ironman?
Yeah, I would say the Ironman was definitely the hardest. My first approach to I've done La Marmotte, that bike race, quite a few times afterwards. The first time was so that old Bianchi racer had like it was actually a mountain bike gearing on it. I don't know what I bought it in, right? So the lowest gear that was like I think it must have been like 30 something, and on the front it was like a mountain bike chain on the triple.
Yeah.
So it was actually really, really good for being a first.
Oh, for sure.
For a climbing race, right? And then the year after, when I got in to do the first Ironman, I was a little I already locked like a target for my time, and particularly for the cycling and the running part. Even though I hadn't done a marathon, I was pretty confident on the run. So I think I pushed myself a bit more on that.
Gotcha. Went a little deeper, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Then we were unlucky that there was a lot of sewage spillover in and around the water and the swim. So basically, everyone who did that Ironman didn't feel super good at the end of the run.
Jeez.
So that was like another culinary experience that I got to. So, but yeah, I'd say the Ironman was definitely harder.
Gotcha.
So then after, we hear about the Ironman hangover quite a bit. So after you did that one, did you want more, or were you satisfied with your Ironman career?
Yeah, I definitely wanted more. I think the whole I definitely wanted more, but there's three big things that happened to me in my life at that point in time. It was falling in love with triathlon. Then I started university, and I started my first business. So 3 really time-consuming things happening all at once, and I had a lot on my plate. So I think the training part, it was for a couple of years I was much more focused on the process of training and getting out and getting that mental stimuli through training. Rather than actually competing a whole lot. I did a few races, but I was much more focused on becoming a better swimmer, becoming a better cyclist, and becoming a better runner, basically. So I think it was I was hooked, but I had to balance everything out, and I knew if I set a target of doing another Ironman the year after, it would be too much. I would be too competitive. I would have too much of a target of time, university and starting a business at the same time. It would be too much. I really had to prioritize how deep I could go. So it took quite a few years before I did another Ironman, but I did some smaller races and in between.
So what was that first business that you started?
So that was it was actually together with Bo, one of my co-founders in the Magic5. And it was a completely different business. It was a software business, an online auction
Okay.
Very specified things in the utility industry that I don't want to bore you about. But long story short was that it was actually a pretty successful business. We had a few. I Bo had the idea. Actually, that was also how it was with the swimming goggles. Bo got the idea. He approached me and said, "Hey, don't you want to run with this and try to build the business?" And I said yes. Had a few employees in Copenhagen, small office, but the market was only Denmark, and we were waiting for Europe, the European Union, to open up the market to all of Europe. Then it would have been a fun business to operate. But that never happened. The policies never got in place, and then we actually decided to scale it down.
Gotcha.
The potential was not big enough.
So how long was it from that point to when you guys started the new business?
So I was 18, 19 when I had the first business, did that for some years. Then when we scaled it down, I went out and got a normal, boring corporate job working with mergers and acquisitions, doing a lot of Excel gymnastics and fancy PowerPoints. But then luckily Bo, he called me after 4 or 5 years of doing that and complained about his swimming goggles and pitched the idea that we should develop some technology so we could scan people's faces and we could make a custom product. And I was pretty quick to jump on that boat. Let me just put it that way. I still trained, I still swam. I hated my goggles. I did my last Ironman with a pair of sweets because, and this is the story of how the Magic5 came about actually.
Mm-hmm.
I did my last Ironman in Swedish goggles because the best swimmer that I knew was Niklas, our third co-founder of the Magic5. He was a pro swimmer in Denmark. I was lucky to swim on his team where Rasmus Henning also swam, a good Danish triathlete, really one of the best we've had. And they all use Swedish goggles. So that's what I used. So Bo called me, complained about his goggles and pitched an idea. We called Niklas. I was like, hey, what do you think about this as a pro swimmer? And he was all in it. And then we started the Magic5. Yeah.
So when you guys decided to start, did you have any idea? Did anyone have any experience with the scanning, the apps, the anything?
No.
So ground zero on the whole thing.
And I'm not BSing you guys. We started on a whiteboard drawing. We had no idea what we were doing in either of the things. But this was no, that's not right. We had an idea of what was possible and where the technology was, but we didn't come from a background of doing facial scanning technologies, fitting technologies. So, and quite frankly, in 2016, when we had the idea, that was when the idea came up the first time. You were not on an iPhone 14 with an in-depth camera. The hardware space was completely different. It was like iPhone 6, 7, no, iPhone 5, right? So the technologies that we had to make had to reflect the hardware at the time. Then that has developed over time. So the scanning technology that we developed in 16, early 17 was different than what it was today, right? But we basically, and this is Bo, who's the mastermind behind that. He basically developed the scanning technology from scratch.
Oh, wow.
And developed our fitting technology. It's really our fitting technology, which we see as the core. Scanning is just, quote unquote, the easy part. It's just getting the data. The tricky thing is, what do you do with the data once you have it, right? It's not like you scan a face and we build a 3D model and whoopsie, we can make a custom pair of goggles. It's all the process in between, from the scan to actually getting a custom product. All the things that happens in between. That's really the tricky thing. Yeah.
So what was the time frame from concept when he comes to you and says, "Hey, are you on board?" to producing your first pair of goggles?
So we late 16, he called me the first time. In early 17, we had full-time jobs. I was working with M&A and he was a top executive in a big IT startup. He had like few hundred, 500 people in his business divisions. Um, in early 17, we were able to scan a face. We ran around to the pro swimmers on Nicholas's team and tried to scan their faces. And I was like, do we get the data out the way we want? And then once the data, does our fitting technology then position the goggles the right way on someone's face? And of course it didn't. It made like first time, right? So, but that was like the first like minimal viable product that gave us the okay, this is actually possible. We don't have a whole lot of experience. We don't have a lot of scans. We don't have a lot of data yet. But once we get that, we were super confident that we could make an outstanding product. So that I would say that, and if I can't remember the exact timeline, but I remember it as being early to mid 17 that we got to that inflection point.
So like well less than a year then.
Yes, for the prototype, right? Then the next thing that happened was that we refined the concept over a couple of months. Then we launched the Kickstarter campaign, got the first 1,500 customers through Kickstarter, and then we convinced our wives to move to the US to build the business over here. So that was what 17 was about. Yeah.
So what made well, you got the initial funding through Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Well, I guess did you have any other funding to get through the kind of early prototypes? You guys just kind of threw your own money at it?
Threw our own money at it and bootstrap. So we've never had a venture capital big money approach to the business. We wanted to keep a lean and mean production machine on how we make the goggles.
For sure.
And Nicholas and a few other guys for the first couple of years, working with paid media, marketing, then making goggles, then doing customer service, like doing the full spectrum ourselves. And it was important for us from the get-go that we could make a product that was, I know it's not cheap compared to a suite, but it's a relatively cheap custom product, right? It was important for us that we could do that and have good unit economics, make money on the products that we saw. So it was like a healthy business, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's how it was for the first couple of years.
So I'm backpedaling a little bit here, but when you guys were like designing the first prototypes and stuff like that, what were like the main problems with goggles that you were finding that you were trying to fix? I mean, I could list off a million things about goggles that I dislike, but not your goggles, but other goggles. What were the main things that you were trying to fix there?
I think it was interesting. It was me and it was Bo who came up with the, like he's really like an inventor and super brilliant guys, like thinking a lot really creatively around products. But I think what tricked him was he went on a training camp on Lanzarote for a couple of weeks and he forgot his goggles, right? And I think he had been through the same process as most other swimmers, which is you go through maybe 3 to 5 goggles and you stick with the pair that's the least worst, right?
Yeah.
And then that become your pair, right?
Sounds like bike saddles.
Yeah, it's kind of like bike saddles.
Yeah.
Shoes, running shoes.
But then he forgot his goggles on Lanzarote and went out and had to buy the goggles that they had in store and they were just really not working for him. So he got super frustrated in that training camp because it messed up most of his swim practice. And then he called me as soon as he got home. It's like, about this for 2 weeks. Why don't we do it? And I think he was really tricked by the triathlete. There's so much gear you can buy. You have an expensive bike. You have like all sorts of things. And then you go out and buy a $5 Swedish pound goggles or $20 goggle that is uncomfortable and that leaks, right? And that was really the core. We saw that as the biggest issue with swimming goggles was that the reason of having goggles on is to make sure that you don't get water in your eyes. But what good does it if you get headache, if you get like scratches on top of your nose, or like if it's just dead uncomfortable to wear the goggles? And that's really what we want to fix. Yeah.
I've always, my problem had always been that I could never, like, if you're a triathlete and you try to have a fast start, either a diving start or something like that, there was not a pair of goggles in the world that was going to stay on my face in a diving start until I used Magic5 goggles. That, and eventually, like the peripheral vision was terrible. Like you couldn't see people to the left or the right of you, so it just made sighting harder. That's kind of my two favorite things about Magic5 goggles is they actually stay on when you dive in, and the peripheral vision is awesome.
Yeah, I think that really comes, and I'm really happy to hear that because it's intentional. That's intention behind the design, and that's really Niklas that came into play as a competitive swimmer, right? Where the fit and how it's custom is kind of the foundation of the goggle. That's a key thing that we want to fix, and the most important thing, right? But then when we were about to design the goggle, Niklas was like, the thing that he really liked about goggles, and that was the differentiator for him before the product that we made, was the peripheral view. Because when he did competitions, it's super important that you can keep, especially for someone like him, 200 meters IM or breaststroke, that you can keep the right position in the water and don't have to twist too much to look at your competitors, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I was like, okay, let's try to widen the peripheral view out as much as possible and still keep that race profile of the goggles. And that's why we came up with the angles of the goggles, because that's how we are able to take the glass all the way up to the side and give you that peripheral view. So that's actually the purpose of that.
Gotcha. So fast forwarding a little bit, you mentioned real quickly that you guys just decided to move to the US. So like, how did that all come about, and how much wheeling and dealing did you have to do with your spouses to get them to move to the US?
So first step was my wife's favorite white wine is Chablis, so I had to buy a good bottle.
There you
go. No, I think jokes aside, Bo and I have been super lucky that our wives really believed in this project from the get-go, and that they had the same perspective as us. That was one, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it right, and we're not gonna do it to sell 100 goggles a day. That's not why we're doing this, right? We had some pretty good jobs and things were lining up well, so just because we had some bigger perspectives on it. And doing it right is starting it up in the biggest market, being closest to the biggest group of customers, and that is quite frankly the US, right? That's the biggest, most homogeneous market for swimmers and triathletes and recreational swimmers. Secondly, we're very fortunate to come from Denmark, which is it's a very, very great place. We love it there, and it is we saw this as a life experience to move to the US and try that, quite frankly, for our families, and get that experience, right? Denmark is a flight ticket away. We would just go back, right? I know it's a little bit more complicated than that with kids and everything, but that's really how we saw it. Like, you only have one life. Why don't get that experience if the opportunity is there, right? And now we had a good reason to do it. We wanted to build the business here, and our wives were working for American companies, so we could get a visa transfer, which is a very, very big asterisk to that equation. That's how things were enabled, right? So this wouldn't have happened without them, without their support. We couldn't have moved to the US the way we did. So that's part of that story. That's how that story is.
So when you guys first moved to the US, Were
Yeah.
you, did you immediately go to New York?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been in the city for 5 years with
Okay.
my wife. Now we have 2 kids, born
Yeah, you have a
here.
newborn, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, 2 weeks. So
Congrats.
we are plenty busy, but no, it's good. Everything is good. So we have 2 kids now. When Bo moved, and his wife, they moved with 2 kids too. So it was a bigger move for them with kids going to schools, and it's not like me and my wife, just like the two of us. So that was relatively easy. And my wife, she happened to get a job in New York, so that's why we ended up here. And Bo's wife got a job in Charlotte, North Carolina. So that's why we have our operations and production in Charlotte, North Carolina. So the goggles are in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Gotcha. I do love Charlotte. It's a good city.
It is. It's a really nice city. Yeah.
So you guys got a Kickstarter funding. I think you put out about 2,000 pairs of goggles or so from Kickstarter. I think shortly thereafter is when your catchy marketing got me, the Instagram marketing. I saw the whole thing, the scanning of the face. I was like, no way. That's not a thing. So I did it, and I gave you my money. And I immediately noticed a difference in the goggles. And then shortly thereafter, I'm a Shark Tank fan.
Who's not?
So I was watching Shark Tank one time and saw you guys popped up. So I guess we got to go into it. So tell us a little bit about that experience and being on Shark Tank and how you got on and how it ended up.
So first off, it was a pretty damn crazy experience.
Did you wet yourself?
No, but I will admit, it's almost like you're standing on the aisle when you walk up to the sharks. And we're fast forwarding a little bit, and I'll go back in time to get the perspective. But it's like you're standing there. There's a huge horn. Like, okay, now it's my turn, and then our turn, and then you have to walk up this aisle.
They blow a horn at you?
And the worst thing about it is, it's a reality show, right? So you have to walk up, and you can see the 5 sharks for the first time, and our stage and everything. What does it look like? And then you have to stand in front of them for 60 seconds and just stare at them. And the only reason is that the producers need to get content. And it's the longest 60 seconds.
So is there like a clock counting down, or are you just trying to pace out 60 seconds in your head?
And you can just see how my Cuban, Robert, the other sharks, it's just like one long elevator. Like, look, okay, they're really weighing you out, and you have to put on your biggest, most fake smile, and I'm so ready for this. So that was really, it's a rough start, but But back in time, it was actually one of the producers of the show who had the goggles. And he loves them. And then he reached out to us and was like, "Hey, think you should consider this." And then we applied, and was lucky to get through the application process. And there's a lot of prep. There's a lot of work going into it. First off, the production team, they have to assure that the companies that's being presented, that it's legit what they're doing.
Sure.
That we're not claiming that we're doing a face scan. We actually do a face scan, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not claiming that the goggles are custom. They are actually custom. All those, they really go through our business very meticulously to make sure that we're legit, right? So once that was over and everything was good, we got the shooting date. We went to LA, 3 days. Shark Tank controlled our itinerary for those 3 days. And to put things in perspective, coming from Denmark, where there's 5 million people in the entire country,
the whole
country, that's roughly the viewership per episode on Shark Tank. So it's like, okay, we're gonna go in, be on camera, second language, pitch our business. 5 like super famous, startup entrepreneurs, investors, and we're just gonna do it in front of the entire Denmark. Like,
Is that why you asked us at the beginning if it was live?
yeah, exactly. Because I was like, so the good thing about being on Shark Tank is it's probably the most nerve-wracking thing I'll do in my entire life, right?
Oh, for sure.
So I'll always be able to look back at that and say, it's not as bad as Shark Tank, or it's not bad, but not as nerve-wracking as a Shark Tank.
And it's kind of like that first bike ride you did, right? Like you can draw upon that 9-hour hard, excruciating, I want to quit, you don't quit. Like you can pull from that now when you're going through hard stuff. Similar thing with this.
Yeah, I tell people all the time that anytime you do something epic or really scary or whatever, puts everything else under it into perspective. Anything that's lesser gets really put into perspective and just seems almost easy peasy.
I'm just disappointed we didn't start this with a 60-second pause.
We kind of did.
We kind of did
before we started recording. We just stared at each other.
Yeah,
I read Robert's book, and he talks about just how intense those days are. How they're doing like 12-hour filmings 3 days in a row, and how long were you on there for? They, it ends up being a 5 or 10 minute thing once it goes to TV, but I've heard it's 60 minutes to 2 hours and sometimes more.
Yeah, it's definitely a marathon for the Sharks as well. We were number 2 company that pitched that day, but it is true. Like it was 8 companies or something that pitched that one day, right? And it's just like boom, 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 right? And it felt like a conveyor belt, not too negatively, but it was very much like, okay, now you go through makeup 1, makeup 2, prep this, makeup 3, and final dress. Like it was just very, very planned and structured, super, super professional. And then coming into like a big hangar in the Sony production village with 100 people on set, like people hanging down from the ceiling with lamps, and like it really being in a movie set. It was pretty crazy. But so how long time you're on? You have 90 seconds. You have 60 seconds. That was like those awkward ones that you don't see. Then you have 90 seconds where you do your pitch, right? That is what you heard me and Bro, or if you've seen it, that's where we control everything, right? They won't intervene. After that, it's just an open battlefield, right? So you might be there for 3 minutes or an hour and a half. We ended up being on the stage for like 55 minutes. So after that 90 seconds, it's just 50 some minutes discussions with the Shark. They challenge our numbers. They challenge everything. They figure out who we are. They discuss between themselves. Mark Cuban yells at Mr. Wonderful that he was worst investor for the Magic5, and all type of reality stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
It was very strange to be on that, like be there in the middle of it when they started to attack each other, right?
It's like being in a place with your friend's parents fighting.
Like it was super, super awkward. It was really awkward. But we were on there for like 55 minutes.
Do you remember your 90-second pitch? You can just give your 90-second pitch to all the people listening right now.
No, I can't remember.
I think it's probably changed by now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously it went well. If anybody has watched Shark Tank, it went well, and you guys ended up getting a deal with both Mark Cuban and Robert Hirschbeck. $1 million. I mean, so from that point, are those guys hands-on, or did they just be like, here's the money, do what you want? I'm assuming they want to make sure that their investment is going to return something. So how would things go post Shark Tank?
So particularly Mark Cuban is extremely involved in a positive way. We like very low practical. We send out bi-weekly updates to to those guys, giving them the highlights of how things are going. And it's not every update, but I would say every second update he responds within 30 minutes with a qualitative remark, right? Like asking follow-up questions, good job, guys, or something, right? And like he's just on. With last call we had with him was I think scheduled for 45 minutes to discuss more strategic initiatives, and we ended up sitting with him for 2 hours.
wow.
You can just feel how he is. He's like, uh, it's almost like he can't control it. Like his excitement about talking about growing the business and where we're gonna be in 5, 10 years from now. We have to think long term. We like think about the product, like all those type of things. It's not something he puts on. It's like it really feels like something inside of him that like is. And then on top of that, he has a whole team around him of experts in all different types of areas, marketing, business development, and they are basically just on-call experts that we can reach out to. So I talk to them frequently, like on a weekly basis about different projects, different things we're working on, and so it's like free consultants in their respective fields, which is very, very, very valuable for a company like ours.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is sort of the 5-year plan for y'all?
So there's basically two things that's important. One is sell a lot of swimming goggles. Right? They are in our core markets are Europe and the US. US being our biggest market, and there's 70 million people who swim. 70
It's just a few.
Fitness. And
is that globally or in those two markets?
In those two markets, Europe and the US, they swim for fitness purpose. So it's not people going to the beach, like stuff like that. It's people who swim in the Y or in your recreational pools. It's triathletes, it's competitive swimmers, right? So it's for us the getting out, sell a lot of goggles, and really get the product out there. The second thing is to our underlying technologies, like how you scan your face and how we fit the goggles against your face. That fitting technology that I mentioned in the beginning, that's really our core. That is the technology of every pair of goggles we fit to a face. It's learning. It's getting smarter and smarter and smarter. Right? Every time we get feedback from a customer, it's a closed feedback loop, meaning go in, tell our technology, hey, how you did it for Jan Frodeno. He really liked them. Amplify that, right? So that gets better and better and better. But the whole concept the fitting technology basically doesn't care whether it's fitting a pair of swimming goggles to your face or a virtual reality headset to your face, right? So we actually just launched another product on Kickstarter, which is for virtual reality headsets, where you can get a custom piece to your virtual reality headset so it fits better and it's more comfortable. And we have announced a technology partnership with Canyon bikes. So we're working with them on applying our approach to some of their products. So, and this encapsulates really the second thing that's important for us, and that is to make other products better. Other products where the products differentiate on fit and comfort, we'll use our technology to achieve that.
So almost going more from like what products out there are more of a one size fits all, and you guys are now able to and looking for areas where you can use that technology to turn a one size fits all into more of a custom. You're going to get more joy out of it. It's going to fit you a lot better.
Exactly. Right.
So keep going.
No, you go.
I was just going to ask, I was gonna pry you a little bit on the Canyon stuff, anyways. But are you telling me you guys are gonna be like scanning butts or like forearms?
It's like sitting on the photocopier back in the
day. We're not at the stage where we'll kind of.
Oh, it's aero bars. I know it's aero bars. I'm feeling it.
but it is. I think it's a super cool product.
It's gonna be Aero. It's the Aero bars. It's those Aero cups. I'm feeling it.
Maybe
He's a lockbox. He's a lockbox.
I said probably. I know it's got to be on one of the podcasts, but I said probably, maybe it was longer, 5 years ago or so, that Aero bar and pad technology was going to be like the next big thing in tri bikes, and it has just blown sky high in the last couple of years. And now there's companies popping up left and right that are just making custom Aero bar extensions and pads and all that stuff. So you don't have to say it out loud, but
we're making our predictions over here.
Saying anything, but it is we're excited.
That's awesome.
It's for a company like ours to get approached by Canyon and work with them. It's massive. It's a hero brand in our industry. It's they make really cool products. So it's great. It's really great.
Yeah, it's super cool to be just get invited and be involved in other large brands in the industry. So I know we've gone through this really quickly, and I know this whole journey wasn't as easy as it sounds like in this last 40 minutes. But what were some of the big obstacles that really threw you guys for a loop? Because I know, like I said, I know it's not just been smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm.
It goes up and down in business, and it goes up and down in everything you do, right? It's not like training. You can make a plan until you make a new one. Things can come in from the right. You can get a curveball. COVID was a massive thing for the swim market.
Sure.
In the bike industry.
For bikes too.
Just exploded, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was basically what you could do during COVID. Everything that happens inside an enclosed facility was just shut down, right? So it was overnight that traffic to our site, sales back then in 2020, overnight you could see the graphs, and then boom.
Just flatlined, huh?
Yeah, that was pretty intense. I think the good thing for us is that we were a small team. That lean and mean production machines, of course, it required a lot of adjustments on our side, but it's not like we have this massive corporate setup with tons of people. So we were able to adjust very, very, very quickly. And then we quite frankly looked at each other and was like, okay, what are we going to do until COVID settles? And these were the very, very early days of COVID. And then the summer ended up being okay and stuff like that. But we took the time and said, what can we do during this period that is meaningful to us and makes sense for those around us? So we did two things. We actually made a prototype where we used our technology to make a custom face mask. So instead of, and that was just to play around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was one size fits all face mask where you push that metal thing against your nose, the N95. Then we made a pretty cool concept where you, based on the scan, would make a custom nose bridge basically that was reflecting and running across your cheek and your nose. So the face mask would rest normally on your face. So that was from an R&D perspective, a fun project that we made. Then the second thing we did was that we reached out to EMT workers in New York City. Being in New York myself during COVID was really intense. I lived on 37th Street and 10th Avenue, which is which was the epicenter of COVID, basically. We could look down on the Javits Center. It was just this pop-up hospital with all the COVID patients.
Oh, wow.
All the dead ones were over there, and over here all the ambulances came driving in. So we kind of looked at that. PPE was in shortage, so we ended up donating 600 or 800 goggles to EMT workers. So EMT workers driving around in ambulances in New York City couldn't get eye protection So we gave goggles, and we reached out to our existing customer base, the Kickstarter community, and they helped us fund the initiative. There's a lot of there's cost in producing the goggles and everything. So we pitched in with the majority of it, but then we raised money to be able to give out as many goggles as possible for EMT workers.
Huh, that's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
I think it was a meaningful thing to spend your time on.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've been in the custom market before. We won't go into it, but I know custom anything is a freaking nightmare. Can be a freaking nightmare, especially on the manufacturing side. So, were there any I have to imagine early on, like trying to figure out, especially how to do a custom something, like you said, at an affordable price.
Yeah.
Like, how did you work out the manufacturing side of that?
So we, one of the first meetings me and Niklas had was, okay, we kind of drew up what is the cornerstone for this product, right? Okay, it should be a better fitting, more comfortable, non-leaking product. The price range should be low. We have to be able to produce a shit ton of goggles in no time. How do we do that? Those are things that don't normally align, as you said.
Yeah.
And so we once we had the first prototypes, we started experimenting with how should we actually produce the product. What we ended up with was, and we've actually just started to unveil how we produce the product. We haven't shown that in the past, but we just started to show that. So it's basically a robot that cut the gasket of the goggle, right? So if I can show the goggle, this is my goggle. You can see there's a pretty deep eye socket, so this part goes in really deep on my eye. When we produce a product, it happens in two steps. One is we produce the entire thing. Then the gasket is over extruded, so it's like a few inches tall. And then we have a robot that gets the data for your goggles or for my goggles, goes in, and then it cut the gasket to reflect the curvature of my eye socket. That means that we can customize the product in a few minutes, and then you get the custom.
Gotcha.
And that allows us to retail the product at $60, right? If we had to make a fully custom product, way more.
Oh yeah.
It would take a ton of time to make, right? And it's honestly where the Magic5 name comes from. We're not trying to reinvent the entire wheel. We are like using the same glass technology, anti-fog coating, strap. The rest of the materials are pretty much the same as other goggles. But it's the last 5%, it's a gasket where the fit really is determined. That's why the magic happens, and that's what we work on.
So what is current production numbers at for you guys?
So
on
right
a daily,
now, we can make around 2,000 goggles a day. We don't sell 2,000 goggles a day. I will disclose that. We'd love to, and we also like to sell a good bunch more than 2,000 goggles a day. It depends a little bit on seasonality. Now we are in low season, so we sell a couple of hundred goggles a day. But so it goes up and down.
So I know you have you have Jan Frodeno and Matt Grievers as they also investors in the business.
Yeah.
So did they just use the goggles on their own and then just decide they loved it and said, "Hey, we want in"?
We reached out to both of them and said, "Hey, we think you should try this product, and if you like them, let's discuss." Right? But we also upfront with both of them and say, "Hey, we're not Speedo or Tier or any of the big brands yet, so we have to do it in a different way, and we also think it makes sense if you guys have skin in the game, if you actually believe in the product. If you believe in the product and the vision, and it's a very differentiated product that caters to the mass market, then the equity approach is we believed was the right approach, and they also believed that that was the right approach. So they were both in on that, which has been amazing. Say Matt is kind of the gentle giant of swimming in the US, and has really helped us on how to understand the college, the high school market much better, and help us work with that part of the market in the US, which is super important for us. And then he's just generally a really nice person to work with. And there's one thing you learn is that it's, and I guess it's the same for you guys. It has to be fun what you're doing. You have to work with people that you like to work with and hang around. Right? And that is, it's such an important thing about anything you do, that it has to be fun. It has to be a great journey. And it was frankly the same with Jan. A very underrated part of Jan Frodeno is his business partner Felix, right? Who is his right hand man, and Felix and Jan, it's an amazing team to work with, both on the product and activation and everything for the brand. Yeah.
I assume that you've probably gotten a decent amount of feedback from Jan and on the product. And has there been anything that he's brought about, or Matt or somebody like that you've just immediately put those changes into place?
Yeah. So one thing with Matt, for instance, Matt Rivers, he's a backstroke, right? That's his stroke. And if he is, he was very particular on how the goggles, the angle of the goggles, when you do backstroke, it's for his navigation, right? Was very important that we could work with the fit in a very particular way. So we worked a lot with Matt on adjusting our algorithm on how it should fit the goggles so that it also works for backstroke folks, basically.
Gotcha.
And that actually took quite a few months with him getting his, like, the level of feedback you can get from Matt Rivers is different than what a normal pool goer would be able to give. And it was first when all of that was in place that we actually started up working with him in a structured way. And I think it was kind of the validation period for him as well. And almost the same happened for Jan. He came in really early in the business, right? And he had some feedback with the first goggle that he got, where he felt that after 30 minutes, 20 minutes of swimming, he started to get leaking in one of the eyes. So he gave us that feedback, and it happens for around 5% of our customers that the fit is not what they expect it to be, right? So, and it wasn't for Jan with his first goggle, so he gave us feedback. Then we went in, looked at the data from his scan, looked at how the fitting technology fit the goggles against his face, and identified the issue, sent him a new pair, and then he was like, this makes sense, right? So that's part of our process. It's part of our fit guarantee that if there's anything wrong with the product, if it doesn't live up to expectation, let us know, because we can work with it. It's not a one size fits all product that gets spit out of a mold and what you see is what you get. We can work with the product, and working with the product helps us make a better product for everyone else. Yeah.
For sure. We have had, between our training group, athletes, and the swim group, we've had a lot of people end up trying out Magic5 goggles. And I maybe heard a couple of reports of people who it wasn't perfect. And then, but everyone has said customer service was great. Got a whole nother pair in a short amount of time, and everything's good to go now. That is one thing. I think I actually had an early pair that this was maybe the first pair I ordered. I ordered a couple, and one of them, like the coating was like smudged a little bit in it, and within a couple days had another pair. So as far as companies go, I know Bryant and I both weigh heavily on customer service. So,
when we're recommending stuff, it's do we like the quality of it? Does it work well? But ultimately, stuff is going to happen. It tends to happen. And if you have a company that stands behind their product and has almost this, not only they want to improve it, but they have a no questions asked sort of, we're going to make it right. Those are the companies that we recommend all the time.
For sure. And well, I guess that's a good time to say full disclosure. We do have a partnership with you guys for discounts for our training squad and our athletes and all that stuff.
This is something we are not making money off of. So it's
No.
The Magic5 is nice enough to give a discount. We're not making money off any of this.
Yeah.
This is
In
just
fact,
value for you all.
Feeling a little generous here. We're gonna extend a discount code to all the listeners. I'll throw it up on the screen. So discount code is COC20 for 20% off Magic5 goggles.
So thank you guys. Thank you for offering that to the listeners. That's awesome.
Thank you for having me on the show. I think that's a little way of paying back.
People want to check you out. Obviously, they can just search on Google for Magic5. What's your website for those that want to go take a look at everything y'all are doing?
Themagic5.com.
Themagic5.com?
Yes, it's pretty easy. Just jump in. You can,
And what's turnaround time if someone goes and orders online? What's that turnaround time for them?
So again, it's a custom product, so we have to produce it, right? Once you place the order on the website and submitted the scan of your face through our app, it takes us a few days to produce the goggles. We say it takes up to 5 days. Typically, it takes around 3 days for us to produce it. It's based on our backlog. How many goggles do we have in backlog? And then in the US, shipment time should be no more than 5 days. Disclaimer: we all know what can happen with the transportation and shipment time.
Using USPS or using
is that FedEx? Is that USPS? UPS?
Exactly, but it's around 5 days. You can, if you're in a hurry, you can get an expedited for 3 days. But I would say like a good week, then you should have your goggles from purchase, and then a week, and then you have them.
That's pretty impressive for a customized product.
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Man, we appreciate you. Sitting down with us, giving your time. We appreciate everyone else hanging out, listening, watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Adios.
Peace.